The greatest war of our time ended in a stalemate. In its wake, political chaos and extremism spread across the world like wildfire. Germany fell to the Spartacist revolution. France was overtaken by the radical ideology of Futurism, led by the avant-garde art movements, and Russia became a right-wing dictatorship under Alexander Kolchak. This would become the Red Flood. In 1905, in the Far East, the Russian Empire had won a Pyrrhic victory over Japan in the Russo-Japanese War. Russia had lost more than half of its navy in the war, but had consolidated its influence in Asia and re-established itself as a major power again in the international community. The Tsarist regime had survived the chaos of the 1905 revolution, triggered by the terror of Bloody Sunday, where soldiers opened fire on a crowd petitioning for peace in St. Petersburg. For now, the Tsar's rule was secure, but Russia was far from stable. The economy was backwards compared to other European powers, and revolutionary unrest and discontent were widespread among the population. The Minister of Interior, Pyotr Stolypin, was appointed as Prime Minister by the Tsar. He implemented iron-fisted measures to pacify the revolutionaries and convicted and executed thousands in a mere 3 years. His reforms pushed to modernize the Russian state, angering both the left and the right, as he attempted to empower the peasants and the capitalists at the expense of the old order. His efforts to bring modernity and efficiency to Russia resulted in him becoming the target of various assassination attempts. At the end of his first tenure in 1911, on the 14th of September, in a theater in Kyiv, a far-left assassin attempted to kill Stolypin, firing his gun, but his shots narrowly missed the politician, instead hitting none other than the Tsar himself. Tsar Nicholas II would die from the gunshots. His 6-year-old son Alexei would ascend to the Russian throne, overseen by the regency of the Grand Prince Michael, Nicholas's brother. In the new regency government, Stolypin retained the position of Prime Minister and continued his reforms. He created a pro-Stolypin coalition in the Duma called the Government of Confidence. Under his continued premiership, the Russian economy continued to enjoy a period of astounding growth and saw the modernization of the imperial army. Russia was now strong enough to become more assertive in the Balkans and Asia. In 1913, this new strength would be put to the test. The Kingdom of Bulgaria, discontent with its losses in the Balkan War, invaded the Kingdom of Serbia. Russia came to the defense of its fellow Slavic nation, ordering the imperial army to mobilize on the Romanian border. It was clear Russia could not help the Serbs without marching through Romania. Seeing this, the Romanian king, Carol I, sought assurances from the Central Powers. Russia ordered its troops to move in. Treaties and guarantees went from words to material facts, and soon Europe was embroiled in the Great War. Years of industrial warfare unlike anything seen before would change the course of history forever, and by the end, very few states could count themselves as victors rather than victims. What would later become known as the First World War proved to be one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. The German Empire had successfully knocked France out of the war in 1917, but had failed to defeat Russia. Russia itself had weathered the war due to Stolypin's earlier reforms, but found itself unable to clench a final victory. Strikes and riots consumed Russia, and due to mounting political pressure, Prime Minister Stolypin resigned. The ongoing British blockade of Germany caused a harsh famine to break out. The German people had grown tired of the war. As the pressure mounted, the Kaiser's government bitterly agreed to conclude the war with the remaining Entente powers. Germany was forced to cede much of its territory. As negotiations concluded, the Spartacist revolution broke out in the streets of Berlin. Socialist revolutionaries led by Karl Liebknecht quickly overthrew the imperial government and proclaimed Germany a free socialist republic. Across the country, civil war spread. Despite the severe economic crisis in Russia, the Russian government ordered its army to resume conflict with Germany and occupy East Prussia in the hope they could march on Berlin and instill their own regime. Worker-soldier Soviets in Russia began to organize in factories with the inspiration of the German Revolution. The socialist revolutionary government cut a deal with Russia in exchange for non-intervention in the German Civil War. The Communists would cede East Prussia to Petrograd while promising to refuse support to communist insurgencies in the country. As a result of severe drought and post-war devastation in the south of Russia, famine began. Major anti-Russian rebellions erupted in Ukraine, Belarus, and Central Asia. As the situation spiraled out of control, Tsar Alexei, suffering from his hemophilia, died in his sleep. His death started a succession crisis. The Soviets, seeing his death as a sign to topple the Tsarist regime, launched a nationwide uprising. Political turmoil stormed the country as peasants rebelled against their landlords. Revolutionaries captured Petrograd, arresting Grand Duke Michael, ending his regency. With the Russian throne absent, a coalition of liberal and social democratic parties took charge of the country. In Germany, the communists had routed the imperial government, forcing them to flee to East Prussia, now no longer under Russian control. With the red flag flying over Germany, Karl Liebknecht declared the German Socialist Republic. Few states recognized this new Red Germany, and instead acknowledged the military dictatorship in Prussia as the legitimate successor to the former empire. As for the Russian Civil War, former admiral and war hero Alexander Kolchak had been asked to take command of the anti-communist alliance. By 1926, Russian white forces had defeated the communists, but the empire had lost Ukraine, Belarus, Finland, Poland, the Baltic states, and Central Asia. In the immediate post-war Russia, the Social Revolutionary Party was the de facto supreme power in the country. The party convened a constitutional assembly to settle the issue of government. The press found out that the Social Revolutionaries planned to declare Russia a republic. This outraged the conservatives, aristocracy, capitalists, and ultranationalists, who launched a military coup installing Admiral Kolchak as supreme ruler of Russia and acting regent of the Russian Empire. This would become known as the Kolchak Putsch. The majority of socialists and democratic sympathizers were either killed or arrested, although a few plotters, leftist leaders, and Jewish businessmen suppressed by the Kolchak regime managed to escape to the Far East, creating the rump state of Zheltorossia, the last bastion of democratic Russia. Meanwhile, in Western Europe, France had been facing its own increasing turmoil. Back in 1917, it was not the French army that failed to win the war, but betrayal from within. As Germany launched an all-out offensive on Allied lines pushing France to its limit, the SFIO pulled out of the Union Sacrée, declaring a general strike and bringing the nation to a halt. As strikes paralyzed the Republic, the Germans made decisive breakthroughs on the Western Front, forcing France to drop out of the war. As the British Expeditionary Force retreated from the mainland, they occupied the port city of Calais. The rest of France fell into chaos as the unstable liberal government collapsed in on itself. Riots and street fighting became commonplace and crushed any sense of peace. The masses demanded justice for the dead, and the post-war youth rejected reactionary traditions. A young soldier, Antonin Artaud, already predisposed against Marxism, was heavily shaped by this event. After 3 years of anarchy in France in 1920, the monarchist political movement Action Française took power, declaring the Fourth French Republic. Georges Bernanos, a vehement critic of defeatism and frontman for the AF, was inaugurated as the first president of the Fourth Republic in a coalition against the left. His presidency became marked by heavy-handed opposition to groups such as the SFIO. In reaction, a new wave of political thought spread to France, riding in from Italy. It was called Futurism, an ideology that rejected tradition and classicism and instead embraced ultra-modernity. The fundamentals of life itself would be reimagined and remodeled. Velocity, technology, and war would be the new driving force of society. Radical change and avant-garde art would be the favored style of expression. This modern ideology would make up the first core of what would become known as accelerationism. Guillaume Apollinaire, leader and founder of the Future Squadron, made it his mission to spread futurism to France. He added his own twists and unique French flavor to make it all the more appealing. The ideology attracted many and soon influenced the avant-garde and gradually won over the Parisians. This would move the French avant-garde into the political sphere, with people like André Breton publishing his Surrealist Manifesto. In 1924, Action Française made a fatal misstep. Bernanos finally tried to restore the French monarchy. Acquiring permission from the Pope, the AF started to repeal the law of exile, which banned former ruling families of France from residing in the country. The president then relocated the capital to Orléans and announced his intention to restore the Orléans monarchy. This sparked immense rioting and almost plunged France into a civil war, as the entire nation had grown tired and sick of politicians, statesmen and gentlemen, and seeing the old values fail yet again. They craved someone to speak to the rage boiling under their shattered pride, paving the way for Antonin Artaud, a visionary and a man with a knack for playing to the crowd's passions and instincts. This allowed him, with the backing of the Future Squadron and the Surrealists, to win over the mob and prevent France from ripping herself apart. Artaud, now the figure of the people, was appointed with the historic title of Mayor of Paris. While openly critical of the government, Artaud held off on taking hostile action due to his previous friendship with Bernanos. For now, the central government limped along. Artaud, together with Breton and Apollinaire, formed the National Front of the Avant-Garde, with the squadron becoming the official paramilitary of Artaud's Parisian regime. In 1928, the Radical Party replaced the AF government, with President Paul Doumer being sworn in among large amounts of protest. Artaud and his clique rallied the people and initiated an all-out assault on the Republic to overthrow the government and seize power, which culminated in Artaud famously tearing apart the constitution of the French Fourth Republic and throwing it into the Seine and proclaiming the renaming of Paris to Le Soleil in 1934. This led to more rioting, which was swiftly put down by the squadron and resulted in Artaud declaring himself le patron of the avant-garde France on the anniversary of the Paris Commune's founding. Now the country is focused on two values: speed and revenge. Things in the country would never be the same again. The line between the living and dead would thin, a shimmering silver thread between this reality and the next. The power of modernity to bring forth the primeval, the superiority of the unconscious over the conscious, the triumph of the metaphysical over the dialectical, the rending of reality. This is the red flood.